Hi everyone, this is Media Matters. I wanted to start up a YouTube channel there's a lot of reaction channels out there, a lot of review channels, and I definitely wanted to go create my own channel along those lines just to see a different voice that's out there, because I think there's a lot of different voices out there that do the review and the reaction, but I think a lot of them are coming from the same place, and I think there's room for more. So this is my attempt, and this is not just going to be about music reviews or music video reviews. This is going to be a channel that's examining kind of more a personal viewpoint of a video. So it's not just going to be a channel about listening or reacting to a music video or a song, and thinking what I hear about, what I think about it, how I react in that moment, but hopefully bringing some personal input to that, like a story behind that, some autobiographical information about how that song, that moment, that whatever that content, whatever it is, impacted me at that time. And so, in examining it from a personal point of view, I'm hoping to kind of broaden that out and ask the bigger questions of how media impacts us, how the content that we intake impacts us in the moment, and also just on a grander scale, how there's things that we take in that we might even not even know at the time that is impacting us and influencing us, whether if it's just the mood that we're in, or even if it's something bigger and broader and more meaningful, like our viewpoints on life and our way how we view the world around us and our place in it, and also what's going on in the world around us, because there's so much going on in the world, and especially right now, it's 2020. We've been stuck in hibernation and isolation with the COVID-19 lockdown that's been going on. There's a lot of social unrest that's going on, a lot of protests that are going on. And it's just interesting to examine what it is that we are taking in, whether that's the news and where we're getting our news from, because a lot of things have shifted now, where the major news networks aren't the only news outlets. And we see that a lot in things like mask wearing. People aren't necessarily going to the usual news sources. They're going to other things like, oh, well, I saw this one doctor's post. Oh, my friend posted this on the website. And so much has changed. And even in the last 5 years, that level of shift has been enormous. Certainly it's been more enormous over the last 10, 20 years when, there wasn't YouTube, there was social media, didn't have the enormous impact that it does now. So I just want to really examine all those things of how we choose what it is that we intake, but also how even the things that we are not consciously choosing, we're subconsciously letting in and letting it impact us, like going back to being in isolation and the world that we're living in right now, the social unrest that's going on right now. So one of the big things that's happening besides, where we're getting our news from is, it made me think, I don't know if everyone else is starting to do this, but naturally, during the isolation, before the Black Lives Matters stuff really started to come into play, I started to listen to a lot of music that was about change. Maybe it was just you started to see the signs of these things coming. But I started to listen to those things, put playlists together, all of those things. And then I noticed there seemed to be this collective of everyone. Once Black Lives Matters hit, everyone started to kind of gravitate towards protest music and all, music of change and all of those kind of things. But then it made me start to think, oh, do I really want to stay in and listen to this long playlist of really charged, amped up, angsty, and kind of angry music? There's times for that, there's a place for that. And it certainly does meet a catharsis that's needed, But then, do I really want to dwell in that? Do I really want to stay there? So making those playlists to me kind of brought that awareness of, hey, I want this moment of release, but I don't want 3-4 songs worth of it so that I'm stuck in that moment, stuck in that mind frame of just being angry. Because that song, no matter how great that song is, no matter how much it might be relevant to the times, or those songs, like too much of that might put me in a place where I get in this vicious cycle. I'm looking at things that are in the news, that are depressing or that are, that bring about a reaction that it should bring about, of just disbelief, of just anger, and also just what's the word I'm looking for? Even disappointment in our own system, in our own society, and just humanity in general. And feeling that kind of those low level kind of emotions and thoughts, and then adding to that music that comes onto it, or shows that I might want gravitate towards and things like that. Like it can maybe things that conversations that you might have with your peers, with your friends, with your family, or even, God forbid, you get into, a social media discussion, and that can spiral out of control, those kind of things. So all of those things kind of add up to all these separate sources of not just information, but of energy, of the emotions that are coming out of viewpoints that are not quite just your own. It's all these things that are shaping where you are now and what you're thinking, and maybe even how you think. So, like I said before, music, media in general, it's not just about in the moment that it affects you, but all of these things that we're intaking and we're taking in can have a profound effect on the long-term way of how our mood is, what our trajectory is in terms of how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about the world, and also how we view the world and how we view ourselves. So all of those things can have long-term impact and effect, not just the immediate effect of in the moment that song or that movie or that show or whatever. All of these things can bring out really, profound emotions, like, things might make you cry, either of sadness or, depression, or even of joy or of laughter, or even of hope. But, usually those things are just in the moment. all the other things that come out of that have a broader impact on us. Like if we're continually listening to that same type of music or that same type of show, like for instance, if I'm watching, criminology shows all the time, where the focus is always on a murder or something like that. People are always being wronged. So that's always in my head now. I'm always thinking about that now. The mood is always there. The music that comes up in those things are always there. The mind frame of something's always wrong, or something is not always right. Versus if I'm watching comedies all the time, then everything's lighthearted all the time. And maybe I might not take some other things seriously enough. So it's just, I want to be conscious of all those things, of what we're choosing to input and also what we're subconsciously inputting, and examining that and looking back on what we have chosen in the past, what we have experienced in the past through media, how that matters, because this channel is Media Matters, and how we can really start to change the trajectory of that and have more control over that, and really be more conscious in the shaping of what energy is coming into us, what thoughts are coming into us, how that might change the way I view people, situations, and even history or real life events. Because, for example, like History Channel just came up with the Grant Limited series, and it was a great, great show, right? However, like, that being a great show and the reenactment and all that, it brought a new light on Ulysses S. Grant. And before this, there was a much more negative viewpoint. Like, he was not a good president. He was a failure in his life elsewhere, outside of the war and in general. That was kind of the zeitgeist of the things that you would read or hear about him. But then you come to find out that actually that is a lot of rewritten history, where the South, as it turns out, tried to rewrite what it was they fought for. And not just what it was they fought for, but then the figures in that war, and tried to make it more of a, well, everyone's bad, in this sense. So we're just as bad as everyone else kind of scenario. But really, that's not the case. There are levels of, good and bad, or, what people truly were trying to fight for, what truly did happen. And there are levels of, like, how implicit a person's privilege and ignorance and all of those kind of things are within that time frame or a time frame. And so to try to blanket all of society at that time as, oh, everyone's equally racist, or everyone's, these people own slave and those people own slave. Yes, that's wrong. But the level to which that was played out and realistically happened in history, there are variations there, you know, because say, for example, with Ulysses S. Grant, it was mainly from what I gather, the slaves within his family were from his in-laws. You know, his own personal lineage, there was no slave ownership or anything like that. Sure, he owned slaves, and that became part of his life, but at the same time, he freed slaves. So not just in war, but individuals that he knew. So is that going to be at the same level as a slave owner in the South who's highly racist, doesn't see these people as people, and wants slavery to continue? No, that's not the same. Those are completely different things. However, there was this shift, and there was this pretty much propaganda movement to reframe the good old South as something of, you know, this grandiose, you know, genteel, you know, God-loving and God-fearing people, you know, and kind of play down everything that happened in the past. And this has happened over time. Part of that was the monuments that went up. A lot of these monuments that went up to Confederate heroes they weren't put up right after the war. They were put up years and years and years later as part of this propaganda movement. Same thing with Birth of a Nation. This happened years and years after, where it was you know, framing the South as this uprising that was supposed to be, you know, something that was a tribute and good thing for America, you know, and it's anything but the thing. But that's the propaganda that was put out there to play down any kind of heroics of the Yankees or the North or any of the heroes that was happening. And so, now granted, each side would probably have its own propaganda, but that's an example of how the Confederate flag has been construed as that's just one example, the Confederate flag. How that is construed as, oh, it's part of our history. It's part of American history. No, it's not part of the United States history. The Confederate flag is part of the history of the states who defected and tried to separate away from the United States. It was treason. It was the flag of treason. So to try and play it off as, oh, it's American history, no, it is not United States history. It is the history of the states who tried to get away with treason and separate from the United States of America. Those are two separate histories. That would be like us after the Revolutionary War still flying the British flag. Now, granted, some people use it now and fly the British flag, but normally that's more in terms of pop culture, like in terms of like music and movies, not so much in terms of, yay, we want to be under the Queen again. No, you know, but if after the Revolutionary War, Revolutionary War, the colonies, the United States of America, were to all like start flying the British flag, that would be ridiculous. You know, everyone would be like, no, we fought this war for a reason. They lost. That is the loser's flag. The Confederate flag is the treasonous loser's flag. There's no ifs, ands, or above or about it. That is history. Confederate flag is the flag of the side that wanted to separate and that lost. That's not hyperbole. That's not opinion. That is historical, objective, unemotional fact. So to try and frame it as United States history, no, stop. That's clearly not the case. But there you go. That's about how people, groups, movements, parties, they all try to turn our view of things and rewrite the way how things are actually, rewrite how things actually were and frame it in the way they want it to be framed. Like the South wanted to be framed as people of God, because here they were attached to what is essentially an entire Southern culture of dehumanizing people, of going against the teachings of what actually Christ would say, to Christ. That teaching of Christ is unconditional love. It's not, oh no, love for you, and no, not you because of this or that, or not you because of this or that. It was unconditional love. I mean, even on the cross, right next to him was a murderer and a thief, and he gave love to both equally. There was never let me go down your list of crimes, or let me go down to see where were you born again, or let me look at your skin. There was none of that. It was in the Bible. Man brought that on, So the South tried to reframe itself as this genteel, God-loving, God-fearing, loving its neighbor kind of persona, which you see in like the way they talk, their little gatherings, and how what they wore, the way how they talk to each other. That's very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very superficially nice, and there's a great etiquette about it. There's a grace about it. Like Southern hospitality, That's all nice and good because it's something that's there on the surface. But then what lies beneath that? What lies beneath that exterior kind of genteelness, that exterior hospitality? Yeah, you might be nice to my face and offering me lemonade on your porch and offering me food and things like that. But when it comes down to it, do you really see me on the same level as you? Would you want my kind, or people of darker skin kind, telling you what to do? Like, on the same level that people of your own skin color will tell you what to do, And I think that comes out a lot in things like the barbecue Beckys, the Karens, the pseudo 911 calls of ridiculous things, of people barbecuing, people selling lemonade. People just walking down the street, people selling CDs, people going into their own homes, And so I think that we're seeing a rise in those things, not just because of cell phones and how easy it is to distribute that amongst social media and how quickly that can go viral. That's definitely one of the reasons why we see a rise in it. But another reason why I think we're seeing a rise in that sort of behavior is that as society and America in general, or more specifically, I mean, as America in general, start to see more freedoms and more equalities come into play for the minorities. And also, we start to see the population of minorities start to rise. And where we see more minorities start to get into positions of power, not just positions of popularity, like entertainment and or of individual business. That's more something that impacts things on a more minor scale. But when we're starting to see minorities get actual power in politics, in business in general, in Congress, and even local governments and local systems, then that becomes a situation where there's less power, less majority for the ruling class. That's a scary place to be, and it could be eliciting a lot of that fear, that kind of sense of, wait a moment, I need to police these people now because why are they feeling more subjective or subject to and being more what seems to be more out in the open, and I think that might be another catalyst or another factor of what's truly going on is that these barbecue Beckys and Karens are all of a sudden feeling that sense of loss of, they wouldn't call it privilege, and I'm not even sure if privilege is the right word, but that loss of kind of a status, and they're seeing other people who are doing normal things, but they're doing it with what they see as, there's a higher status or freedom that maybe there wasn't before, and to them, this is probably a subconscious thing that they're not fully even realizing. That's a change that they're feeling, and they're not even sure fully what that change is. Because look at what they're attacking. They're attacking normal, everyday things that they would never attack on people of their own skin color or even themselves. Would they really, call upon their own family for selling lemonade on the corner? I mean, that's American as apple pie selling lemonade. That's ridiculous. We see that, we've seen that in our own nostalgic movies and TV shows and, stories. That is Americana. Same for barbecuing, But here we are. And this time where suddenly that's a crime or that needs some kind of, special permit or something like that. And I think that speaks volumes to where we are now, But then that brings up a whole other side of things of when these Karens get called out and they get attacked on social media, they lose their jobs, some of them, um, just a whole bunch of negative things start to happen because they got called out, named. People find out who they are, what their actions are. You know, a lot of us might want to say, oh yeah, that's karma. You know, that's, what comes around goes around, all that stuff. And there might be something to that. Like this person did get what they deserve. They're feeling, what they were putting out there. Because when you're threatening to call the police on a person of color, you know what that means. Otherwise, you wouldn't threaten to, otherwise that wouldn't really be a true threat, Like, the implications that could lead to if you threaten to call the police on a person of color, That's life impacting potential, not just in the moment, I don't want to say an arrest is small, but like, as we've seen multiple times, it could mean life or death. It could mean major injuries. It could mean that the police have now earmarked you, as a person to watch out, that a person that they need to be on the lookout for. That's the potentials that can happen versus just, versus the isolated incidents of being arrested for something minor. These are more life-changing things. So when those Karens threaten to use that, and they actually do try to do it, they know full well what they're doing. They're not stupid people in the sense that they don't know what's going on in the world, And the very thought to do it says they know what the repercussions for that person is, So fast forward to when those Karens get their comeuppance. I'm actually not sure where I sit with that, because I do have a strong Christian background, upbringing, and just in general beyond Christian, just the Christian world, in other beliefs as well. There's the idea of putting out love and higher energy, and the whole even non-spiritual thing, just on a objective morality thing, the idea of being above an eye for an eye, So I don't know where I sit with these things. On the one hand, some of these people, if we're just looking plain objectively, some of these people deserve what they got in terms of the backlash, in terms of losing their jobs, in terms of a lot of these things. But the other part of me thinks, on the grander scale of things, on who I am as a individual, who I want to be, there's that. Don't I want to be better than that? And it's weird because I preached out in the job place, the workplace, if I'm talking to a peer, or if I'm talking to a subordinate, or if I'm talking in any form of authority type, whether that's um, an authority by position or just from a place of, hey, I know what the guidelines are within the company or whatnot are, and I'm not going to sit there and be silent about it, kind of authority. So either way, but that's one of the things I always kind of, when I get into kind of that area, I try to impress upon myself and also the situation and the people. Is like, all right, in order to get past this, we have to see beyond, to see and be beyond an eye for an eye. Otherwise, this thing is just going to keep going, you know, and it's just going to be a cycle and nothing's going to get resolved. We're not going to be able to move on. And you two or the people involved might not be able to work with each other, which might result in actions such as, you know, neither one of them would want, either terminations or being put into different areas. And both of them are going to be seen as, oh, well, these are going to be people then that aren't necessarily the best at relating with other people, you know? So there's that other side of me that thinks I I don't know if that karmic, I know that's not actually what karma is, but I can't think of another word right now. If that comeuppance that these Karens are getting, I don't know if that's really a, a good thing in the long term. Like, does it solve anything? You know? I don't know. I mean, unless that makes them learn, you know, that's a different story. But it's certainly not changing the system, you know? It's certainly not preventing other Karens from coming out and doing the same things, because they keep doing it, you know? And it doesn't do anything to address systemic issues, you know? So I think a focus on that is a little, I can understand why, myself included, I can understand why, with myself included, people get some sense of either relief or some sense of, I guess, justice when they see Karens get their due. I can get that, but I just don't know if we should be, or definitely for me, if I should be calling for that or wanting that. But again, that's going back to what are the things that we are digesting, that we are taking in from what we see, what we're witnessing, what we're listening to in terms of any kind of media, whether that's music, TV, news. And where are we getting that from as well? So that's even a whole other topic of where we choose to get things from. But those are all choices of what we're taking in and how much of it we're taking in. And also how deep we consciously choose to dive into those things. I'm not saying all of it is bad, or I should have completely isolate myself from the world around me and not take in anything. But the level to which I take that in, and also the level to which I do it without consciousness. Those are all huge, big factors in how those things will impact me and play out in my life. They will, all of these things set the tone. They add up to all of these things of how I'm framing things, how of the world I am letting myself be a part of the emotions I'm letting in or out, of the thought processes, of the images, of how I view this group versus that group, or this person, comparative to how these people see this person, to how these people see this person, all of those things. Or to how the media has portrayed them, those all play an enormous impact. And I think that's something that we should really be picking apart and examining and really kind of being fully conscious of, because it's not just a passive, let me be passively conscious of this thing that I'm watching. It's also actively choosing what I'm going to take in, at what time, and how much. And during and afterwards, how much am I going to examine what's being said here? What feelings came out of this, what insights came out of this, what thoughts came out of this, what viewpoints came out of this, because again, sometimes entertainment is just entertainment. But even there's a level of consciousness that I can put into that. Like, I can say to myself ahead of time, this thing that I'm going to watch, it's just going to be for pure entertainment and nothing else. If I consciously go into it like that, then I'm more aware of it ahead of time, and I'm more aware of letting those things get in and letting anything that I don't want to get in kind of stay in that realm, in that moment, and not go beyond that, because I went to it with a mind frame of not just being aware of the mood I want to go into, but also just what this specific thing might bring up, And that's not to say I should be guarded with everything, but I should be conscious of those things and fully aware of those things, and knowing that along the way, these are all choices I'm making, These are not just things we should be passive about, especially in this day and age when there's so much input I'm not going to say information because not all of it's information, but there's so much information coming from everywhere. I mean, now we're living in a world where everything is input coming in. You know, you could be looking at your watch, and that's more information than time now that's coming in. Your phone is just more information than what the TV used to be. You know, the TV wasn't always on you. You know, you only watched X amount of time, and that time, even as a kid, was probably restricted to a certain amount of times during the day, and even that, the style of programming you would get, you would even know what that was ahead of time. You would know 6 o'clock is news. You know, Saturday morning is cartoons, things like that. You know, and there's comedy at prime time, you know, at 8 o'clock, and then there's dramas at 9, things like that. You would know. Now, nothing is as regimented or as relegated. Now, not only are we getting more input from multiple devices, now it's coming at us from every angle, from everywhere, from multiple things at once. Because how many times do you catch yourself watching something, you know, on TV, but you're also looking at stuff on the phone at the same time, you know? And then you might even have a watch on doing, and other things are coming on, notifications or whatnot. So now we're living in this world where everything is coming in. It's even like, it's beyond anything before of where things were before, where first there was, you know, the radio, then TV, then cable came along, you know, and then the beginnings of the internet, you know, that come on. But now we're in this world where everything is coming from everywhere. So it's not just from major sources. It's coming from, like, going back to the beginning of what we were talking about with COVID. There's actual medical organizations, nurses boards, doctors, I don't even know what the word is I'm looking for. Doctors associations or whatever, and boards and all those kinds of things, where medical professionals are putting out information. Yet people are saying, I don't trust any of those, you know? I trust what this one YouTuber is saying, or what my aunt Beth's saying, because she's actually, you know, went to the doctor and told her this, or she went to some, you know, herbologist, and this one herbologist told him this. You know, it's like, what are you talking about? You know, like, science isn't just one person telling you something. Science is a collective repeating the things that got you to that conclusion, and all of those steps that got you there being able to be repeated by multiple people. You know, that's part of, I mean, obviously that's not all science is, but that's part of the process, where whatever process it took and steps it took to get to either the end result, the information that came to the conclusion, those were identifiable processes that can be and that were repeated. Ergo, it's a scientific process. It's not just, oh, someone has this opinion. No, there's the major difference. But now more than ever, because something shared more, all of a sudden, I think there's a confusion there where people are thinking, oh, it's shared more. This thing, this piece of information. So it must be true. Look at the views on this, you know. I got this information because it's on my aunt's, my aunt on Facebook posted, and so did my cousin from another family on Facebook and my friends. No, they're just sharing the same idiot piece of information. It is not that several entities, several people, several different boards and bodies and, scientists and, or just researchers in general went through the same examination and came to the same conclusion. No, that's the same video that's being shared by different people. It's coming from the same source. It's like, but people are confusing that with, oh, well, everyone's talking about it. No, that's just everyone talking about it. Don't confuse things. So again, that goes back to what it is we're taking in, what it is we're inputting. And that can even be to, like, do other people's opinions and reactions inform something as simple as, or what we may think of as something as throwaway as a pop song, where maybe the lyrics are throwaway or seem like it's throwaway and all that, and we ourselves think it's throwaway, but how we input that, how we take that in, again, that could impact how we take it in, how it's presented versus, and even the when and the timing. So it might not even be other people and their reactions and their influence on us, or the media's critics impact on how I might view a song before I actually hear it, but also just the mood I'm in, the time that I'm in, could have a huge impact, because I could love a song in one moment, think of it in one way in that moment. I could still love it a decade later, but then feel or see something completely different, the second time around. And that could be the greatest thing ever, or sometimes it could be like, oh, as a teenager, I was angry, and angsty. So this song just was on constant repeat. And now I almost never listen to that song, So when I'm hearing it now, nostalgia comes back, and I might still kind of rock out to that song a little bit in my head, but at the same time, I know not just subconsciously, I know fully consciously, I would not put the song on very often nowadays. I would not, or even songs like that. I'm not in that same mind frame or in that same scope, of, it might still bring me, the nostalgia or a sense of joy because of the nostalgia, or just inert energy from the song itself, but it's not going to have the same impact. And again, that's because of how things are framed differently now. And it's funny how that comes up, because a lot of the media, or the songs, the movies, but especially the songs, because that's what I want to focus on the most, is that there's certain artists and there's certain songs that are timeless, where the specific meanings of those songs were one thing at that time, but the core emotion and the core topics and themes resonate and are still there throughout time. But then there's those cores and those base themes stand the test of time, but the specifics of what they're applied to now or what they might relate to now are just can be so much different, but still so much the same, because that core base feeling, emotion, or theme that's running through there is so timeless or universal or both that it carries through. And there's a lot of artists that are really, 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 really good at that. And there's other artists that that song can be really, really great, but it's so entrenched in time. Like whether that's the sound or the lyric or probably a mixture of both. And that's a major, major impact, because it's not as timeless. When like there's certain sounds that sound like a certain decade, and even there's certain lyrical references that tie it down to a decade now or a certain time period. Now, it's different if it was just one part of the lyric, because then that one part, can give it a timestamp, but if the rest of it's universal, that's different from, say, all of or a good majority of the lyrics being so tied down to an event or a time that are so specific. So those things I want to examine as well. And also that would lead to, how one artist can cover another, and it changes the song completely. So again, it's just how you interpret things, how you take things in, how other people choose to take things in, how that influences you. Because going back to what I was saying before, people's opinion, whether that's a critic, whether that's your peers, people you respect, whatever, their opinions could easily sway how you view something before you go into analyzing, examining, or experience something, and it can also impacting you after the fact. But that influence, like again, I think we can have a lot of choice into how much that really impacts us, how much that really settles in and really guides us or stays with us. Because I think when you're younger, peers, critics, those kind of things really have a strong sway in terms of how you see what you're taking in, versus once you go older and you've come to form your own viewpoints on things, you come to think of things in a certain way and in a certain method than you did when you're young and you're kind of just exploring everything. So it's very, very, very different. So I definitely want to examine and just not just be cognizant of it in a intellectual way, because I don't consider myself an intellectual, but I do want to just bring up those questions of, hey, how did this song or this piece of art or this movie, how did it impact me? How did that impact you? What's the story behind this? Does that story that you have behind it, does it remain? Or is it something that's more, something in the past? Those kind of things. And examine, what that brings, how much we delve into that, how much we make it a part of who we are. Because I think music probably more than any other art form, is one of those things where people say, oh, this reminds me of this relationship. This reminds me of this person. This reminds me of that time or that summer, And so that's what I kind of want to bring about is I'll of course bring up my own experiences with that. But I want that to spark like, hey, if you're listening to the song and if you remember it, or if it's a current song, what are your experiences and thoughts and kind of emotions related to that song? Does it bring up anything with you? Or is it just something that, oh, hey, I like this, kind of thing? Does it conjure anything more than just emotions in that small amount of time? Or does it push beyond that? And I think most music does, and especially like if you experience it live, that adds a whole other element. Because to me, I love live music. And that's going to be something I go into a lot more, because I've seen tons of concerts. I think it's my all-time greatest vice, is going to a concert. And right now, that's one of the things I miss the most about the lockdown, is being able to feel and experience live music. Because it's not just, this I think comes full circle to what it is we're taking in and what we're inputting, what we choose to allow and what we choose to do in a live music setting. The artist is doing that, but so is the audience, and you can tell when there's that connection, and you have that choice. By the artist you choose to pay to see, or if it was free, choose to go to and see. And you can feel that energy, that connection, that kind of zeitgeist of everything and everyone going on around you in that live setting. And that can either take off, or it can just be the opposite, where there is none and it sucks the energy out of things, where it should be greater than what it is. But the crowd is horrible, and you can feel that. And you can feel the band trying, You can see them try to get the crowd into it. But the crowd is just too aloof. LA crowds tend to be that way. And you can hear the difference in crowds from around the world versus America, and even more specifically, LA. Around the world, people get into it way more than, like when I'm watching or hearing bootlegs of a concert in Europe versus a concert in Asia, or even, Australia, from the same band. same song, same tour, whatever. Europe is always way more intense. Same for Asia, same for Australia, than the American audiences. Save maybe one show here, one show there. Like maybe at, Madison Square Garden or this specific club or, that one show in LA, maybe those kind of things. But in general, the energy is so much better in other countries. And I think part of that is because in the US, we might be spoiled, number one. We get to see these people more, but also there's a general aloofness born into the music culture, in America. It comes from our critics, it comes from some of our music artists where aloofness is cool. I mean, that's what cool is, And so there's this wall up, to not as an audience, putting yourself fully out there and letting yourself enjoy things. Like, we even see it in reality, like makeover kind of shows, or shows where something's being created or so where someone's being made over. And it's always like this thing of, every single time someone has all these walls up, right? That's always like the thing. Someone has built up all these walls because either of fear or either of the input that they've gotten, the feedback of the world around them and things like that. And then once they open up and become more vulnerable and all that, all of a sudden everything around them starts to open up, and they become more in touch with what's going on without that, and they feel what's going on around them more in a more uplifting and positive manner, or in a manner where it's not detached anymore, And I think that's, again, going back to the whole thing of how we input things. And that comparison, I think, really shows like a major difference and a major way in how that plays out. And probably evidence for that idea. So it's going to be about those conscious and subconscious choices we make, and how these things impact us. Yeah, not just in the moment, but on a grander scale, and how they even impact not just an experience, a memory, but even the way we view things, the way we see things, even as a collective, the way we see the world, or the way the world is reflected back to us in what we're choosing. So, I think that's going to be a great ride to kind of just examine all these things and just have fun also with picking up and reviewing and just experiencing a lot of songs, a lot of live songs, a lot of music videos, a lot of other sources of input. Like maybe it's just something that's in the news, or it's in social media, all those kind of things, or maybe it's something that's kind of prevalent in media, in movies or TVs, or current theme that's going along, things like that. So it's going to be all those things. And it's just going to be a lot of fun to kind of pick those things apart and just experience those in a different way. Right? Hope you enjoy.